Imagine publishing 4 million words, generating millions in sales, and helping over 160 businesses grow, all through the power of words. Now imagine doing it all in an AI powered world. That's where we're headed, and today's guest on Strategy Talks has the map. Don't go away. I'll be right back with Strategy Talks.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hey everybody, Doreen here with Strategy Talks. I'm super excited. We're going to talk about AI content strategies today. Just like you need to know more about AI content. No, just kidding. This is going to be a fun conversation with somebody who's been writing for a lot of years. So we're going to talk about what's coming, what he's seeing, and what's happening in not just our world, but his world of writing. And I'm super excited to introduce you and bring up onto the stage Jack Wilson. How are you today, Jack?
Hey, Doreen, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I want to welcome not just Jack, but also all of you. If you're watching with us live on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, or if you're listening to Strategy Talks as a podcast, please know that we know that you're here and we welcome you. Jack, let's get started right away with, is AI coming for our jobs? If somebody's watching, they're a content creator, they're a writer, they're a graphic designer. We have heard this statement, and I'm going to make this, and if you've heard it, give us a thumbs up. It's not AI that's going to take your job. It's AI, people using AI that are going to take your job. I see you're nodding. What is your take on this? Is this a true statement? Has it shifted? Because that's been the same thing for like 2 years, Jack. What do you think?
I know. I think that we're still actively navigating what this is going to mean. But the message that I keep seeing come up is the exact same thing you just mentioned, is a person using AI to a greater extent who can work faster and smarter than you do with the tool probably will. The other notion that I've been seeing a lot lately is that the easier to define your job is, probably the more quickly it's going to be replaced or outsourced by this tool. So it's like, if you're a specific role that's delivering a specific outcome. So it's like, hey, if you're just a blog writer or social post writer, that's going to be potentially easier to outsource. But there's so many different dimensions to this too, right? Of like, I could see a company just as much say like, hey, I think we saw with, who was it recently who said basically we're holding all hiring, and now more companies are coming forward and saying we're holding all hiring until we can prove that we can't outsource this position 100%.
I think there were Fiverr came out with that.
Yes.
There was somebody else, but you're right. So
that Shopify.
Yeah. So now that begs the question then, should we, because most of us are multifaceted, right? I'm a social media strategist, but I'm also a content manager. I'm a speaker. I can do a lot of different things. That then seems to be a good thing, that if one thing gets outsourced to AI, that we can still do the other thing. But do we want to advertise that we can do all these things? So how do we market ourselves as a marketer in this new AI world? That really is a dilemma, isn't it?
I think that is where there's a ton of gray space right now. And I'd be curious to like run a poll, and maybe I'll do this week or next, on other marketers of how they're navigating this conversation. Because we were just talking a few minutes ago, there are some of my clients who are very much like, oh yeah, AI is a thing, we're using it. We're aware that you guys are using it. You guys probably know how to use this in a way that's a little more tactical and strategic than we do. They might use it for some casual email writing. Then there's some clients who are straight up like, I've used ChatGPT a couple of times to like help write an email, or I don't use this at all. So I think the conversation changes based on the learning and context of like where your client is coming from. So if anybody ever asked me like, hey, Jack, are you guys using AI in processes? I'll be like, yes. But as soon as somebody was like, well, dude, can't we just like outsource our content and SEO writing to you? I'll be like, probably not the best idea. And here's a litany of reasons why it's not. And it's everything you just brought up. So it's like, sure, you can have it write a blog, but there's a difference between somebody took a 10-word prompt and was like, hey, write a blog on social media marketing strategy, and then giving the AI probably like 400 words of context on who you are, what you do, who you're serving, probably like a history and sampling of your writing so it knows kind of how to write like you and what your formatting looks like, your style, your word choice, how you phrase things. There's so many nuances that I think get missed. So I think the CMOs out there who are like, well, we're just going to like hack 90% of our SEO department, and we're just going to have the intern like do this with a premium ChatGPT account. I would advise that people don't do that because there's way more nuance to using these tools, and then where that content is going to go and the goals and the results it's going to produce or not produce based on the user and how they're using it. So yeah, I think it's going toward, hey, like the strategists and the people who have a deep understanding of the field, the AI is going to be an augmentation for their skills. But if you're like a brand new copywriter or something, you don't know what copy like converts, or you don't know like how to really do keyword research or optimization for a service page or a piece of content, an e-commerce website, you're just not going to know how to use the tool. You might do 5 or 10% better. Whereas you in social media marketing or me in SEO, it might ramp up our skills to like 4 or 5x speed, but we still had to do all that, decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of learning to get where we got.
Yeah, I think the strategy piece is, and we're talking on strategy talks, but a strategy piece is where people get lost. If you are using AI like a one-off tool to say, do the email that, like you said, without looking at your business systems, which is what you really need to look at. It's AI is more than just for marketing, replacing some content that you want to put out, writing a meta ad for you. It's, it can be in all your different systems if you do it right. Just like any other strategy, if we're doing a marketing strategy or social media strategy with me, the number one thing I would start with, what are your goals, right? We're going to do an audit, see what you're using now, and then do an audit. Did you know that I was at this conference the other day and they said 71% of people that go into work, employees, bring AI with them? That's a huge number. And we were just talking in the green room about AI policy. If you are a business owner, small, large, medium, if you're a CMO and you have not set an AI policy, or which is what I found out on the panel that I was listening to, actually have an AI policy, but have not explained it to your employees, and you have no way to enforce it, you are in trouble, because your 71% of employees that come to work bring AI with them, most of the time on their personal device. Think about that. So that's what we're seeing. That's what I think is going to be a big shift in that. So business systems, where can you use AI? It's not just in marketing, it's everywhere, and then move forward to that. So that's strategy for your business. Now, when we're talking about content, Jack, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, how can people assure that this AI generated content that everybody is creating, that it aligns with, and you kind of hinted at it, what you need to do, but aligns with the brand voice and is up to a certain quality of standard? How do you balance that efficiency of the quickness of it with the human creativity? And then, like, how do you balance that? Like, I just want to get it done in 5 minutes, or I'm going to pay somebody 2 hours or 4 hours for something. How would you do that? How would you advise a business owner or an agency that was paying somebody for 4 hours of blog writing? Where do we go? How do we do this? How do we navigate this?
If I was starting from step one and a client or somebody who was hiring me for consulting came to me and said, hey, Jack, we want to build a more personalized AI machine to help us do this, how would we do that? I've been working on this for probably at least 5 or 6 months now, and I've been calling it like a 3-pillar like AI training model. because I started thinking about it, it's like, if AI is like a super knowledgeable consultant or even like friend of yours who works in marketing, I started to see it's like, what would that friend know or need to know to be able to write and create content like me, my voice, my style, my phrasing, selection, formatting? Like, how would that look per each channel, like emails versus blogs versus, any other format, LinkedIn versus X or whatever. And the 3-pillar model kind of goes off of like, your AI needs to know you. So I uploaded to my AI, I can speak from personal experience on here. I was like, how would I train this thing to write like me? So it needs to know about Jack. It needs my career history. It needs to know when I started in marketing. It needs to know I launched my first blog in 2009. And it was a goofy blog where I ran to restaurants and I vlogged it. And then I reviewed the restaurant and I came back and, I put out a video and everything. So it needs to know goofy little things like that of like, okay, Jack's got kind of a sense of humor. He's got these goofy ideas. He's been writing on the internet for a long time. So it has what I call it my like hero's journey or my career journey. Like, okay, so it needs to know that. What's the second thing it needs to know? That it needs to deeply know my audience, right? So I need to train it on who I'm trying to reach and how I'm trying to help them. So that could be reservations, that could be pain points, that could be challenges, that could be solutions, that could be psychological or emotional drivers that are leading them to that action, or what stage in the funnel they're in, the kind of questions they might be asking, and things like that. And then the third, which I kind of already touched on a little bit, is like the channel. It's like, hey, this is what a blog by me looks like. This is what an email by me looks like. This is what a LinkedIn post by me looks like. Notice the word choice. Notice the formatting. Notice that I use short sentences. Let's stick to active voice here. Let's make it really conversational because that's easier and more fun to read than like a written writing style versus a conversational one. So it needs to know those three things. And then the fourth one, Dorian, and this has kind of been the most interesting one I've seen for me personally recently, there's like this fourth dimension of time. So now it's like you have ChatGPT or, Grok or Claude or whatever you're using, learning about you over time. So the more feedback I've given it, and the more posts I feed it of mine, or blogs I feed it of mine, of emails I feed it of mine, it gets better and better and better. So I've even noticed in the past few months with various model updates, how they're using memory, how you can set up your projects, the documents you can upload to it, et cetera. I would say 3 or 4 months ago, I could have ChatGPT write a LinkedIn post and I'd be like, well, this is like 60% of the way there or 70% of the way there, but I wouldn't say these things. And so I'd punch it up manually. But after I did that for 3 months, and I think with some of these model updates and software updates too, and feeding it back like, hey, this is what you wrote. This is what I wrote. Notice the changes here, right? So I think that's a big coaching moment for the AI models. So if I was, like I said, dealing with a client, consulting or otherwise, I would tell them to think about that. I'd be like, hey, anything you can feed them about you that would be great. Stories, aha moments, low points, case studies, testimonials from clients that you've worked with or your customers, audience descriptions. Like I have an audience description kind of like extraction prompt that I use, and it's enormous. I think it pulls out like 1,000 or 1,200 words on my ICP, so it knows exactly who it's writing to. So yeah, that's kind of how I would walk somebody through like, hey, this is how you would go about creating way better content with AI than just opening up a new chat with no context in a project or training on anything. Being like, hey, just write me a blog on, social media marketing trends of 2025.
Right. So what you're saying then is that the upfront work is probably quite extensive, and you need somebody who knows what they're doing. You need to have somebody set this up for you. Once the AI assistant is working, then it is more efficient. I love what you said about, this is what you gave me, and this is ultimately what I posted. So that's the feedback. I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, thank you for that. That's great. But this is the final product. So now I need you to write a second post, base it on what I approved, and then, adjust your writing based on what I like and what I actually posted. And so, yeah, I think that is a great way to go about it. So talking to small business owners, CMOs, saying, there's some more upfront time and training, but then the efficiency is there. So I like that, the way you laid that out. So how do you think AI is affecting how we distribute content and how we consume it, right? People like to say, this big, I know this is going live on LinkedIn. We're live on LinkedIn, and people like to think that they can figure out who uses Chat GPT or who uses AI. I am convinced that a lot of people don't know. They think they do, but they
Sure.
don't. I think there's a lot of content out there that is still written by AI and that people don't detect or don't know. Like you said, like it gets so good when you get down in the weeds of it, when you really train it, that, how has that changed the game with this content going out? I know from personal, I don't like the AI generated images. I don't like them. I don't like the graphics. I don't like the AI generated photographs. I just, I'd rather go outside and take a picture of a bee and post that than have somebody,
Way better.
I don't like it. And that's something I have to get over because initially I didn't like the writing either. So I know it will change as it gets different. What do you think is happening with that?
That's a really interesting question. So for me personally, I can't speak to the image generation as much, but I think you brought up some really interesting points about, hey, can we actually spot AI content versus non-AI content? And I think my answer to that would be, I think a lot of the great writers I follow are using it pretty heavily. I think they've probably built similar systems to what I have going on and a lot of other writers have going on. And at this point, it's seamless because if you're a, Justin Welsh, who's probably written, 1,000, 1,500, I mean, I don't even know how many posts at this point. His training data set is so huge and so refined at this point. Like, why wouldn't he, if he could upload that to a ChatGPT project or Cloud project? Like, it's probably going to write perfectly like him because it has so much context. It virtually knows him. I've been jokingly using this term, and probably other people too, of like, if you can upload your second brain to AI that way, you're not going to notice the difference. I think probably some newer users who are like, hey, I want to test this out with content, you'll probably be able to see like some of the phraseology or jargon or like introductory statements that like a ChatGPT or, Grok or Claude or any of these models would like default to. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that we're in a time where you can kind of spot it and kind of not. And as we know on LinkedIn, most of the AI stuff is happening in the comments at this point. But I think content wise, I think you're right. So like me personally, like I don't mind saying like a lot of my posts, and now since it's getting so much better, I would say like AI writes 85 or 90% like me, down to like word selection. The only things I really need to change are like, okay, formatting here, like I'm going to add a little story or like case study it might not know about me here, but now after I give it to it, it can use it on an ongoing basis in the future. I think you're right. I think it's getting to the point where we're going to be seamless, like in this year, of like the people who are using it really well, you are not going to know.
Yeah. And then this blew my mind. I read it somewhere and I wish I could quote it, but I'm sure Chat GPT can find it. But within the next year, so this was the beginning of 2025, is that the volume of content is going to be 10x online what's online at the end of 2024. So the volume of content that we're creating using AI, books, ebooks, blog articles, it's going to be 10x of what was done before. I probably, like you, I don't know if I've written as many words as you, but I've been blogging since 2010 and I blog for clients. So I've written for myself, for clients. I do social media content. I write, meta ads. I write organic content. I write a lot of stuff. Thinking about 10xing that in 1 year of everything that I've done 15 years prior is absolutely mind-blowing, but I could see it. Because we can write books now. We can write ebooks. We can write checklists. We can write anything we want to if we have the right prompt. So yeah, it's a little hard to wrap our head around, I think, of what's
definitely coming. It definitely is. Like one thing, I was having a conversation with another writer recently, and he was saying like AI might be the thing that pushes us to hit the ceiling of demand curves in certain ways for the first time. And I was like, now that is a mind-bending principle, because like you just said, if this technology empowers writers, content creators, solopreneurs, small agencies, whatever, to like, oh, I can produce 100x of what I used to, or 1,000x of what I used to with like 3 or 4 very AI capable people. Like, are we going to get to the point where there's so much content where even though 1% of people are creating content, like solo people on YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, like, are we going to have so much supply that like there's going to be a bunch of like non-viewed content, or is it just going to be viewed in a different way where an AI breaks it down and aggregates it, so 100% of the supply still like matters? So we're in a really interesting time for that, because right now it like, you know, we're at a place now where we couldn't consume 100% of the content on the internet if we tried. And like, how many thousands of hours or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands are created on YouTube, LinkedIn, you know, everywhere, every week. It's a really wild time to be in marketing.
It is. So talking about wild times, have you seen anything innovative used, like an innovative use of AI, or a cool thing, a cool way to write something or use it for a cool project? I was just saying in the green room, I'm doing a retreat this week, and I used it to plan my menu, and, you know, gave it very strict parameters, and was like, I know what I want to eat. And so it came back at me with an outline, and I'm like, I don't like cucumbers, I don't like watermelons, and I don't like apricots. Take that out of the menu.
That's great.
But it's fantastic. But have you seen within marketing any innovative ways, any wild ways or crazy things that people have said, well, I used AI for that? And you're like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, the thing that has blown my mind, and I know that this is more general, not specific, but there are a couple of people at least that I follow who are just like AI tools. Like they're at the front of like, hey, when a new one of these gets released, I'm on top of it. The thing that blows my mind I'm seeing the most of is how much better and faster the video generation is becoming. Because I remember using some image gen AI tools back in, I don't know, 2022 or 2023. And I was like, okay, this is awful. And a person has like an eye up here and one down here, and they've got 8 fingers on one hand and all this stuff. And then I watched some of these videos, and I've watched even some that are kind of like these fake movie trailers and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is insane. Like, this is going to be the future of like, somebody's going to be able to create like a Hollywood quality movie that would have cost a studio $500 million. Like, I think we're going to see that in a few years. We're going to see some kid who's a director, who's 24 years old, who produced like an hour and 40-minute blockbuster. And so I think the rollback here to like marketing, which is going to be really wild. It's like, oh my gosh, if you can create video ads of like photorealistic people wandering around in real environments, and AI's understanding how to interpret like 3D environments now, which I think was a big engineering challenge initially. Anything with video and AI has blown my mind, because writing is a way simpler use case, right? Like, it becomes a tree of if this, then this. Like, okay, like the AI sees like, hey, when these 8 words are in order, this one typically comes next, and it's gotten really good at that. But the video is so much more complex. So anytime I see a video tool that's creating an ad or a piece of content or something educational, is really wild to me. What about you? What are you seeing that's really interesting?
Yeah, well, you were saying video. I think the video editing piece is huge. You know, I have used Descript for several years because I've had this video podcast, and it was a cheap way for me to get a transcript. I didn't want to pay for Otter AI, so I was like, I'll get Descript. I can strip the audio and I can get a transcript, because it did both. And so about a year ago, probably it was May of 2024, I went and somebody said, oh, you can do clips on Descript. And I had it choose the clips for me. And I was like, no, I can't, I don't like the script. So I was manually creating, you know, you highlight the text and you create a clip. And I was doing that consistently. And then I think only 2 or 3 months later, somebody said, you need to try it again. And I was blown away. Now I tell it to make clips. I use 90% of the clips that AI creates for me, right? Because they're right. Because I've also given it chapters, and I've given the tool everything it needs. You know, it has a transcript, it has the video, I give it context, and then I'm like, create these clips, and this is what I want the clips to have, you know, call to action, or, you know, and it's wild. So I see, you know, a huge change in what it can do, capability with video editing and pulling out. And I'm seeing that on my YouTube channel, where, you know, my first clip that got 3,000 views, like AI pulled the clip, I uploaded it, and 3,000 views. You know, most of them get between 500 and 1,500. But there was one that was a big hit. So, and then it just also gives it the description, and it gives it a title, and, you know, it's better than what I can do. So that's where I see some crazy things happening. But I also love using AI for thinking sessions. I use them, you know, as a sparring
Same.
partner. And I think that's where, you know, as a solopreneur, somebody who works from home, yes, I talk to a lot of people. I'm actually into masterminds. I do try to think with other people, but sometimes they're just not around or available. So
Mhm.
having AI as a sparring partner, I keep telling people, if you're a solopreneur, if you're a business owner, a small business, you have just an inkling of an idea, go talk to AI. It's just crazy. You can have a conversation and push back on questions. And, you know, depending on what model you use, it will come up and say, would you like me to research that next? Or here's 5 follow-up questions. Which one do you want to know about? I'm like, you know, that's having a real conversation with, it feels like a human. And that's, I think, where a lot of progress is made for me to think what's next? What else can I create? Like, for example, for the menu, it then said, would you like me to put the menu together? I'm like, not only that, I want you to give me the recipes and I want you to give me a shopping list. And they're like, all right, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
That use of AI, I think, is incredible.
Like, what a huge time saver. I mean, you just brought up so many touch points there that are amazing. Like, I've started to, outside of work, did the same thing. I was like, I've been lifting weights, exercising, running for 20 years. I was like, why don't I make a training coach for myself? So I made a training coach project. I fed it my entire workout history, like pre-existing injuries, everything. And I was like, hey, I want to retool my workout program around these 2 specific goals. And I'm doing that. I had a couple of friends hit me up last week and they were like, hey man, one of them asked for a social media use case of like, you know, hey, I'm trying to like make a better content calendar template for myself. And I was like, hey man, like ChatGPT can probably do it just as well. But I started thinking, I was like, if I drop it to my AI projects that know me and my preferences, it'll probably give them a better, finer tuned output. So yeah, I think we're going in this direction where, like you said, I walk a lot in the evenings and I will just flip on ChatGPT and turn on like the voice aspect. And I'll just talk out you know, problems or challenges or things I'm thinking about, or, you know, taking something from idea to action. And it's such a valuable like coach in your pocket. It really is.
I love it. So before we go, we're at 27 minutes, which is crazy. I want to talk real briefly about risks, right? If you do not have an AI policy, you're watching this, you're listening to Strategy Talks, number one thing, create a policy. There's some online, talk to ChatGPT and ask what kind of AI policy should you have. You have to have some guardrails along what you're allowing yourself, what you're allowing your employees to use, what your vendors, your W-2s, you know, whoever's working with you. If you outsource to somebody, you want to know what kind of tools are they using, right? But what do you see as one of the pitfalls that can happen when somebody relies too much on AI? What can we expect to see? Maybe some failings. What do you think might happen this coming year? Because I have some ideas on that.
Yeah, I would love to hear your ideas. I think an over-reliance on this, I don't know if this is an ethical consideration much, but an over-reliance on the tool, I think could dull the way you think about problems. Like I've noticed a lot of times, I don't know if you have too, but like instead of defaulting to an old Jack thinking state of just like, you know, I'm going to think through this problem and I'm going to pen and paper this or open a Google Doc or whatever, I'd literally default to ChatGPT and I'll just like default to it for a lot of, so it's like, and I've asked myself, it's like, is your critical thinking and creative problem solving waning because you're outsourcing the machine, or you're using a meta skill now of like, I know how to think about the problem. The machine's just helping me get from A to B faster. So I think that's something interesting in terms of like ethics and companies, people who work with clients, things like that. I would say study the tools and understand the tools because there are more privacy first LLM models as far as I'm aware of, and then like less privacy first. And I think that's a really interesting space to navigate now. So say like a Claude, I think for instance, they're a little bit more like, hey, privacy, data protection focus, things like that. ChatGPT is very much like, hey, your data is shared across conversations and all of this stuff. So I would tell people like, I mean, obviously simple things like use 2-factor authentication, change your passwords regularly, talk to your clients about, you know, how they're using your data. I think you brought up a perfect point, Doreen, which is ask the AI like, hey, I'm working on trying to put an ethical policy in place for how do I how do I use this or explain this to my client or internal people at my company? Help me think through this as a problem so that I can establish something on paper. Turn this into an email that I can send out internally to kind of standardize this over my team. So that's what I would recommend for going in those areas, because I think that we're in the wild west of it right now. Like you said, when you started blogging, a decade ago, I started blogging in 2009, 2010, started consulting for social media in 2010 as well. It was the wild west. Nobody knew what Twitter was or Facebook or how to use it. And people were just posting selfies of like, hey, I'm grocery shopping right now. What's everybody else doing? So we're still in the early days. It's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think that one of the best case uses that I heard about is like when you are using a new tool, get the terms and put it into AI and say, what does that mean in plain speak? Can I use this? How can I use this tool ethically? And how can I explain how to use this tool to my employees, or what should I know not to do? And so using AI to explain legal stuff, which is one of the things I was at this conference this week, was another thing is, legalese is so hard to understand, but using AI to tell it to me, explain it to me like I don't know anything. I'm not a lawyer, right? And then explain it to me and how I can use this. So I think that's another good way to use AI as a business owner, making sure that you understand where before you might have to hire a lawyer, you still should hire a lawyer if it's, contracts and stuff. But when you're looking at tools and when there's terms of service, put that in there and ask it to give it back to you and say, explain this to me. What does it mean, what I can and cannot do? We are at past half the hour. Jack, where can people meet you, connect with you? What's the best place to find you if they want to know more about you?
Well, Dorian, as you well know from the litany of posts that I've liked on and commented of yours, if anybody wants to chat, I am on LinkedIn all the time. I love it. Love the platform. Love the community. If you want to check out my website, it's just itpaystowrite.com. It hasn't been updated in a while, but there's a lot of great resources for new writers and content marketers now to help them get started. And I've got a free lead magnet sitting on my LinkedIn too, which is an AI writing roadmap. I've probably put 30 or 40 hours into putting that thing together. So if you're interested in writing and creating better and also like human authentic content with AI, that's where I would recommend people would go.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you being with us today. Be sure to check back next week. I'll be back with another episode of Strategy Talks. Jack Wilson, thank you so much for being here. I love these conversations about AI. Believe me, guys, we'll be talking about more AI coming up soon in, future episode of Strategy Talks. For now, farewell, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Dorian.